Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Institute for Human Sciences, more specifically to our library here. My name is Ivan Vejvoda. I'm a permanent fellow and I head the Europe's Futures program. And it gives me great pleasure and honor to welcome my colleague and dear friend, Professor Petar Bojanić, who will talk about Europe as project, collection of documents and counter-institution. Petar is a philosopher. He is the full professor at Belgrade University and director of the Center for Advanced Studies of the University of Rijeka. He's also the president of the Institute for Democratic Engagement in Southeastern Europe. He is a researcher of war, ethics of war, violence and its cessation, Jewish political theory, institutions and counter-institutions. Petar studied philosophy at the University of Belgrade and at the École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris, under the supervision in Belgrade of Professor Miladin Životić and of Jacques Derrida, with whom he did his PhD. He has been a visiting professor at many universities around the world, and he was also, for several years, the director of the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory in Belgrade, which carries the tradition of the Praxis Philosophy group in former Yugoslavia. In full disclosure, I am today the chair of the board of the Institute for Philosophy and Social Theory in Belgrade. Petar is the author of many books, and today we are here to talk about Europe as a project, but also on the occasion of the publication of Petar's book, published in Frankfurt with Klostermann last year, with the title In-Statuere, Figures of Institutional Building. Lots to talk about here. The inspiration obviously comes from his mentor, Jacques Derrida, but also many other authors like Castoriadis and a whole set of philosophical schools, but with the intention of looking at institutions as, if I were to simplify enormously, various figures that can truly transform violence into long-term stable peace. And clearly with the situation that we have in Europe today, with the Russian invasion and aggression of Ukraine, with what's happening between Israel and Gaza after the horrendous terrorist attack by Hamas in Israel, clearly this is not only a philosophical theme, but also very topical. And last but not least, I welcome all of those who are with us because we are live streaming this in various European capitals, from Paris through Berlin to Rome and Madrid and worldwide. Petar, the floor is yours. I will ask Petar a few questions after he ends his presentation, and we will then open it for a Q&A.
Thank you very much, Ivan. I'm very happy that I'm here, especially with you and with others here, with fellows. Okay, I'd like to, you gave me 20 minutes. I'd like to be...
25.
25, okay. I will try to summarize and to explain what is in the title here. Europe Project, Collection of Documents, Counter-Institutions, and explain abstract what I proposed here to do. First of all, okay, there are many contexts. First is the book, then the books close to this title, close to this book. That means the title is In-Statuere, Figures of Institutional Building. In-Statuere, you can see the first question is what does it mean, institution? An institution is not, we can say it's some kind of protocol, it's not the concept. This is complex word, in-statuere, institution. That means to stay, stable to be on the legs, stable. In French, this is au bout, être au bout. This is contrary to fundus, in fundus, fundus or foundation. Fundus is back. And this is different kind of stability. Institution is to be stable, to be upper, yeah, up, and to sit down. The foundation is something, how to say, closer to the ground. Institution is a little bit complicated, a little bit fluid, and that's why always on one way trivial, on the other way very complicated, complicated in different languages, very difficult to understand what does it mean in different disciplines. Well, I try to first of all to understand what does it mean to build something stable. And first of all, immediately you have different contexts, of course. The other context could be if we are philosophers. If we are all philosophers, I will talk differently. But now I have to first of all tell something about when starts institution, because we know we are in war, and I'm reminding the one important figure in West history is Saint-Just. Saint-Just was revolutionary, and even translated his book, his essays in Serbo-Croatian many years ago. It was 30 years ago, I think, yeah, more and more. And if you remember this guy, he was very young, Saint-Just, revolutionary, very tough guy. And he wrote the fragments, the book, small book. The name is Les institutions républicaines. It means republic institutions. And he said, we had a revolution, war, atrocities, aggressions, and now we have to have institutions. That's why, to protect us from corruption. That's why institution for him, or for a revolutionary, for us, is very important. It means that in the beginning you have a violence, you have a conflict, you have aggressions, you have a war, and then institution. But before the institutions, because war and institution are synonymous. It means this is the war could be first institution, or we can say first institution is language, but immediately after the language is war. And this book starts with this, with the war, with the end of the war, with the end of the violence, collective violence, organized violence. We are starting to think about institution. We are starting to think about institution differently than war. But we have to, why war is institution? Not just because we are doing something collectively, we are sharing some kind of agency, we are working something together. But plus, war is institution because we have to think about tomorrow, about this period of after the war. We have to think about the victory, if you want, or different kind of victory. We have to think about something after. Well, this is when, for example, I have here one interview from, and the title of interview of Michael Walzer, important professor emeritus of Institute for Advanced Studies in Princeton, who said it's no crime, for example, it's no crime to be a Russian soldier in Ukraine. Well, we in Rijeka have a fellows Russian nationality and Ukrainians, and when I gave this title to one Ukrainian, he said, well, this is 19th century. It is impossible to be just to be. He said Moscow's war is unjust, but there is no moral obligation for soldiers to refuse to fight. See, it's no crime to be a Russian soldier in Ukraine means that you have to be just. You have to think on next step, on what's happened after the war. That means you have to fight justly. This is very important, and this is proof that without violence, without war, we are not thinking on one way or another, and we are starting to think in our life when we are seeing the violent acts, because you have to justify violence, or you have to. That's why we are thinking about violence, and with war we are always thinking collective responsibility. Well, not just individual responsibility. And with this several operations, we are institutionalizing the war, and in the same time we are institutionalizing the peace. Well, in second interview, I must mention this in Walzer, because Walzer is a huge institutionalist, one of the best institutionalists in last century. And today, several days ago, he gave an interview in El País, and he said also very important things about Hamas, about Israel, and for example, one sentence is good: by winning, I mean politically, even if the military cost is very high. Well, in the abstract of this presentation of the book, and we can say my work, important is to rethinking this category as, for example, victory, because it's very difficult to talk today about victory and about this kind of institution after the war. That means we must rethinking all, because war today is different, and rethinking all categories of war and then categories of peace. Well, nevertheless, institution here, I try to explain this word. I'm talking now about institution, about peaceful institution without violence, or with the transformed violence, because in institution, as you know, we have many violent, symbolic violent actions or protocols, because justice, institution, right, we can say, are transformed violence, transformed conflict. That means in each institution, in right, in justice, we have remains of violent strategies, of something before. And in that case, for example, rules or obligations, or for every institution, most important, I tried in this book to think engagement. Engagement is also, on one way or another, military word, but not just this. Engagement as an engagement means to some kind of enthusiasm to build institution, to build good institution, or if you want to transform group of people, group of men or women, you have to have engagement. You are in process of engagement, and you are starting to build something stable, which the name could be institution. Well, I'd like to ask this slide, please, and you can see this. This is the first here first institutional or origin of institution in the history of the West, of the world. This is 11. This is, you know, one of the most important visual strategy, West strategy. This is Babylon Tower. 5 sentence here, and first institutional, we can say, building. First, you have several, in first 5 sentences, you have several key words, we can say, for institution. First one is language. There is no institution. Language is first institution, and in the same time, language is force to institutionalize all institutions, all fields of knowledge, for example. Then here you have group of people, migrants, and they are talk to each other all the time, and they are, you can see the word let us several times. They are very enthusiastic. They are trying to be together, to work together, to build something together. Then you have, I think on second or third sentence, you technology, invention. There is no institution without invention. They build something new. In that case, some kind of new material. Then you have a project. There is no institution without the project. That's why Europe is the project. And here you have, before that guy, before that inspector, because at the end you have some kind of control or inspection. You have this important sentence when this group of people wants to create some kind of name. That means that wants to create institution or create something stable, something, and that was the principal problem for Lord in this story. That's why Lord, as a policeman, destroyed this group. Anyway, project. There is no leader in this story. They are talking to each other. They are producing some kind of speech acts. Plus, they are working with their hands. Plus, project. They invented a huge, monstrous project, because without the project there is no future. Without project, that's why Europe could be. This is project. They want to build a document, you know. They are group, and that's why they want to have a name. That means to have some kind of, they want to register as a NGO, as an association, and that was the problem for them. It was when they start to build something new, because institution is institution because of invention, invent something new or solve the problem. That's why we have institution, to solve, to help. Well, in this story, you see they didn't produce document. When I said Europe, he's as a collection of documents, that means that, as you know, you have to not just sign the documents, you have to follow some kind of papers. Europe could be paperwork, this is not just rules, but without this kind of paperwork, there is no, why we need the papers or documents to communicate with the other institutions. For example, I have an idea, I have to present my idea to the other institute to legitimize myself. That means that this is, we can say that it's very easy to explain on the example of marriage, because marriage is first of all contract, but plus institution plus status, and well, you legitimize yourself in front of the other institution. Why this is in the same time the first institutional building, but in the same time counter-institutional building, because this institution never existed, but never, that doesn't exist, we can say today, or we have to fictionalize existence of Babel Tower. Counter-institution, why Europe is counter-institution, this is a term invented by Saint-Simon. Saint-Simon first at the beginning of 19th century, when he was in England, he said that exist simultaneously with institutions in London, of institutions of government, some kind of counter-institution, some kind of association, very important for democracy and very important to control or to be parallel with official institution. Well, and then in between this and Saint-Simon, you have one French writer, Rabelais, François Rabelais, who invented also in counter-institution. You have some kind of utopian moment, as in Europe, as we know, because every project has this utopian moment. Rabelais invented this is a beautiful story. He said that exists some kind of he wanted to against the church to invent something completely new kind of institution, which must be, and he said the name of this institution was for him Telem. Telem, he put some, you can find this in his book in the two parts, second part of his huge book, and this story about Telem, where Telem is the open institution, that's why counter-institution, completely without walls, transparent, as Europe must be or could be, then institution without rules. And he said something much more problematic and difficult, because exists just one rule in this counter-institution. This is fais qu'est-ce que tu voudras, ça veut dire do what you want. And this is most problematic rule, because you can't do what you want, because you have to have all the time attention what the others doing. That means to combine, to do something reciprocally with the others' will. Plus, he said there in this counter institution, Telem, there is no walls, because walls are with walls we have gossips, we have conflicts, we have violence, etc. And entrance, on the entrance of this institution is marked no hypocrites, you know, not for hypocrites. It's difficult to say that if the Europe today is an institution like this, like TELEM, but anyway, one of the principal regulative idea of Europe or of just institution is to erase all hypocritical or strategies. Well, I can probably stop here, and I hope I describe well this idea, and we can differentiate in that case, well, institutional acts, counter-institutional acts, and anti-institutional acts, because counter-institution is not anti-institution. Anti-institution is, you know, idea. Probably Foucault is anti-institutionalist. He doesn't like institutions generally, but Derrida is counter-institutionalist. He'd like to work with the others and to arrange something new, and that's why probably he was one of the great Europeans at the end of last century. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Petar. This is absolutely a huge topic. I did and have your book of 400 pages. I will not pretend that I read every page, but I delved into topics that were closer to me, and obviously Europe and institutions and the utopian moment that you mentioned, and I'm very glad that you did, because obviously Saint-Simon was thinking of a new form of association among people, you know, that is not hierarchical, that is not one where there is servitude, to use Lavoisier's term. How does one liberate oneself? And you quote Derrida very often, saying that Derrida says, I want to keep my freedom. I want to keep my freedom so that I can interact with others, so that I can be closer to them. And he uses this expression, je ne suis pas de la famille, I'm not part of the family, which maybe you can go into. But the question I want to specifically ask you about Europe, and that's how I more easily understood what you mean by counter-institution. Europe as a counter-institution, counter to the fact that we have nation-states.
Yes.
In Europe. So Europe is the institution that comes counter to the institution of the nation-state, and as you said, to open the walls that close nation-states in between them, and creates the mechanisms or protocols and the documents that allow, or rather that are best suited to preventing violence and war, because we have had so much war in Europe. And the founding, those who had a project of Europe put their fingers to their head and said, how do we avoid making war? And then you make this counter-institution that's called Europe, that establishes mechanisms, sort of a human technology, where you are able to mitigate conflict at a verbal level, if I can put it that way. Not with arms, but with institutions. I use the metaphor of a building that is built to survive earthquakes. And so it's able to be flexible, to swing, but actually stays upright and stable. So maybe if you could comment on that first.
In Rabelais' fiction, he said that the counter-institution is, or TELEM is an entity special because you can go out when you want. This is first thing. This is very important thing, because from monastery you could not go when you want. And he said this thing. when you said we are producing documents to prevent the violence, well, this is I think very important, because in German I think exists this phrase, like in Serbian or Serbo-Croatian, our marriage is just the piece of paper, just the piece of or just that ink on paper, yeah. And this is argument that document is not important. Well, this is important something different, not documents, but this is wrong. When I'm buying flowers, this is document. When we are going to dinner, this is also document. When we are producing constantly documents, we are in peace. And that's why it's important. You said that's why documents are very important. This is maybe from Kant. Kant had intuition with this small paper about the peace. That means when we are producing all the time documents, that means when we are in communications in one way or another, when we are offering all the time something to sign or to see, we are in peace. Well, and we can say we are in Europe. When we are stopping to do this, we go out. Well, this is importance of document for Europe, not just to accept some kind of rules or some kind of documents to be part de la famille, but also to produce the documents constantly. Well, because document is when we are producing documents, we are institutionalizing our marriage, or our agreement, or our love, or our future, etc. That we can say very easy. That was the Macron stopped on one, and this is forbidden. You have to continue. You remember this moment. We have always this moment when the conflict starts. We stop. Well, I'd like to again before your next intervention to read one counter-institution moment in Walt Whitman. He wrote one poem in 1867, and it's like this: I hear it was charged against me that I sought to destroy institutions, but really I am neither for nor against institutions. I'm neither for nor against institutions. What indeed have in common with them, or what with the destruction of them? Only I will establish in Manhattan, and in every city in these states, island and seaboard, and in the fields and woods, and above every keel, little or large, that dance the water, without edifices or rules or trustees or any argument, the institution of the dear love of comrades. You see, dear love of comrades, comrade. The enthusiasm, probably when we are producing these documents, paradoxically we are producing this enthusiasm, this friendship, we can say. It's impossible for us. This is contrary. For us, we are thinking that documents are some kind of enemies of life, as in Foucault. For him, institutions are enemy of life, but institution protects life and protects our common life. Well.
So, final question before I open it up. So, what's important is the horizontal relationship in an institution. And again, because I'm a follower of La Boétie and the need to oppose servitude and being part of the family in this hierarchical, violent way where you have a top-down relationship with those with whom you are in an institution, whatever that may be. The way I understand Derrida, but also Saint-Simon, looking for a new form of association, or Rabelais, as you correctly quoted him, a kind of utopian thinker before modern utopian thinkers came about, and that's whether it's Robert Owen or Charles Fourier with his phalanstère and sort of different types of rules. Would you say that in this type of institution, and what you said also about the Babylon Tower, is it, if we want a successful institution, does there have to be more horizontality than verticality?
Yes, this story is a proof of this, because there is no leader. Okay, this is always, for example, exists one Kojève's text or small book about authority, where we can find the story practically about the leader, because for him, small story, who has a project, he is or she is a leader, and if you have one group of kids, and if one kid has knowledge about the fruits on the other project to steal the fruits, he will be the leader. I'm not sure that this is the beginning of hierarchy or authority. I'm not sure that this is correct. I think that it's possible, because here in this story you have democracy. They are talking to each other, they are producing some kind of consensus, and they are trying to be together. That's it. I think that the project is always social, it's never individual. When I'm saying my project is, this is stupid. My project is because I'm not part of one group, I'm part of several groups, and I have a project with the other group. That means project is always, project is always something which connects us and open the future. That's why Europe must be always the project, not finished always. You know, project is principal characteristic of project is not finished, not final, but always, you know, in horizon, always closer and closer. Yeah. Well, horizon is horizontal, we can say. Huh? Yeah. Yeah.
Before I open it up, just a comment as I was reading, and you mentioned, and I thank you for that, democracy, which is the key part of a project or institution building or a counter-institution. And what comes to mind is, of course, my mentor, Miguel Abansur, and who talked about the démocratie sauvage, and comparative to what Sheldon Wallin talks about fugitive democracy. So these attempts to realize where, you know, what Marx in his early works called real democracy, as opposed to others. So that was just an association, but I'll leave it at that. I'll open it up to If you have questions or comments to this fascinatingly broad topic where Petar Bojanić has introduced so many dimensions. Please.
So thank you for your interesting speech. And because thank you. Thank you for your interesting speech. And because I'm not a political scientist or a philosopher, I'm an historian. And I'm an historian in the field of Second World War. It's, your way of thinking about the institutions seem to me very like in the positive way that they are protecting us for, to not to let us harm from the state or from the others. But what I'm saying is just based on the Nazi dictatorship or the regime, because it didn't start with the violence or with war, but it was a reverse step. It was the reverse development. They started to violate the institution and undermining them and establishing the new ones and producing a lot of documents to prove that they are right and the others are wrong and the old system was wrong and all people there acting were violating the German nation. And when I go back to the war, then also the war was explained as something what is let's say necessary and inevitable and needs to be done to protect our nation. So if I know that it was all lie, but how do you prevent, or do you think that it's possible to prevent today's institutions to not to go in the wrong direction, or how do we prevent that our institution, our democratic institution, cannot get, out of the way to keep the democracy, to protect human rights, because it seemed to me that in many countries across Europe we can observe already now that it's really easy to violate or to switch direction from the democracy to, let's say, more or less autocratic regime, or to, I don't know if I specify my question right.
That guy, Rabelais, said for this thelem, n'entrez pas hypocrite, bigots. Hypocrite, hypocrites, and bigots, this is swindler, rottens. Well, this is utopia, really, huh? You have always tension in just and unjust institutions, you have to like this maybe. Principal enemy of the Saint-Just at the beginning was anti-revolutionists, king, etc. But after, neutrals, that means the people who are pretending that they are not part of any institution. Well, there are crazy, you can find crazy sentences when he's saying it's necessary to kill all neutral people, to bring them and kill them. He said they are worse than enemy. And here, this is the good example. You have so many neutrals in that period of time. So many people pretending that they are not part. They are not part of the famille. They are not part of us. Well, they are passive. Well, I think that there is nothing outside of institution. But there are, in this period of time like this, when we have aggression, violence, we are always trying to pretend that we are not part of it. you know, and that's the problem. That means justice is always collective work. If we are we are bringing justice in this entity. If we are pretending that we are out, or we are out when we are seeing the unjust acts or bad acts, well, we have this kind of period of time as, or today, we can say the same thing today, because we are always late with just actions. We are always late, that's the problem. We are protesting when everything is finished. Well, you know, that's important, is to enthusiasm or engagement. Without engagement, there is no prevention of conflict, etc. We have to work together. Well, this is the best prevention of violence, I think, you know. But this is a difficult question, because in all regime you have this destruction of, you know, what does it mean, destruction of institutions? This is also stupid. This is production of bad acts without any reactions. This is destruction of institutions. You have bad acts.
So pretending that you have nothing to do with it means, in fact, that you are complicit with bad acts.
Yes.
And that is where engagement or proactive engagement means, you know, to put it in other words, means to fight for freedom, to fight for the institutional role of avoiding violence or war. And as we were talking at lunch today with Slobodan Markovic, that, you know, war is perennial, and unfortunately all that is happening even in Europe now, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with what happens in Israel and Gaza, means that we won't rid ourselves of conflict. And what happened to our country, where we were born in Yugoslavia, that imploded in violence, we were unable to stop it, even those of us who were engaged. But again, those of us who were engaged and were against it, at least, you know, felt that we did what we could, but without success. And then, as you rightly said, what happens after war, going to the beginning of, you know, there's always an after the war. And I think that's a very complicated issue. And, you know, you talk about what I found interesting, I never heard of someone saying the institution of victory. Of course it's an institution, yeah, but I never thought of it in those terms, because it's a stepping stone between war and the after the war. There is usually a victorious moment, and someone wins a little more than, or totally, like Germany was defeated totally and there was a victory of the Allies, or there's some kind of, you know, someone's a little more victor than the other. Any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Maybe just also. Okay. So also thank you for your discussion. My question is maybe a bit also related, I'm sorry for that, but when you differentiate between institution, counter-institution and anti-institution, and how into the scheme would fit the concept of Doppelstaat, which is related to the totalitarian regimes, that you build parallel institutions. So if you differentiate institution, counter-institution, anti-institution, and this concept of Doppelstaat, parallel structures, you know, of the police, and you have a special police, you know, that serves the party, and all these parallel institutions, how it is, yeah, that's it.
But I think that they are para-state institutions, para-state, pseudo-state institutions. They are not counter-institutions in that sense. because counter-institution has some kind of resistance, you know, resistance to, for example, I remember one sentence in Derrida, because generally for us state is something negative. Well, for the left, well, this remains of Marx, that state is something. Well, but we can say differently. Sometimes state protects us from the company. Companies are institutions, and state could be counter-institution. Counter-institution, we can say this is just invention of just institution. Well, problem here is really, again, I have to quote Walzer, because this is in life. Sometimes we have problem like this, that institution is unjust and that you have to be just. That means soldier must be just and could be just, despite that the institution is unjust. Well, we have, Scanlon wrote one text about this tension between individuals and institution and institution as such. Well, this is more problematic than I could not differentiate this as a problem, because paramilitary formations are parasites of the state, not something. Yeah.
This is parallel to the state and not in a way tries to transform the state.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's not basically not related to the state. It is just parallel to it.
Yeah, yeah.
But without any relation.
Yes. You know, it's you know, this is not parallel marriage. You know, parallel marriage is nonsense in that case. You know, you can establish different kind of connections or relations, and that could be counter marriage. You know, it's fine.
Polygamy could be some kind of.
Yes, but polygamy is an institutional idea. How to say? This is.
Another institution.
Yeah, another institution, really, you know. Nothing resistant in this is.
But that's very interesting that Derrida looks at the state as a kind of framework, a protective framework, for lack of a better word, in this moment.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
That it can shield individuals and groups, and it's interesting that he, who is, you know, the person of deconstruction, sees this institution construct of the state as something that actually we cannot overcome, at least at this historical point in time, and that allows for then to be overcome by the counter institution.
Yeah.
That allows then for more freedom, because the European Union is in fact a deconstruction of sovereignty, or parts of sovereignty of the nation state, which I think is one of the virtues that it has, and we see all the difficulties with Schengen and all of these things. But then you also obviously talk, and that's, I keep coming back to Saint-Simon and the utopians, of a new form of association. That's where civil society as an institution,
yes,
associations, you know, NGOs, etc. They are an institution within the state institution, right? Or is that the possibility of engagement in the state where people can congregate with a project?
Yes. Plus, okay, I had on my mind, because in philosophy, when you are using analogy, you have to use counter analogy. Imagine that Hungary protects us from the Europe. That will be the same story, yeah? If we can imagine this situation that some state or sovereign state can protect us from the Europe, in that case, Europe will not be counter-institution, will not be project. That's important, that love is love if it is project. The same thing with the Europe. I'm not sure that Europe could be total. That's why this idea is brilliant. It's impossible to think Europe as a totality.
Any other questions or comments? Well, if there aren't any, yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you for your interesting insights. I'm an architect and town planner, and I'm convinced...
Rabelais was also...
Yes. I'm convinced that institutions produce space in between and outside. What is in your thinking, in your concept of counter-institution? What role plays space in producing documents? Mm-hmm. Is architecture, built architecture, or thoughts of architecture, or thoughts of towns, landscapes, or also nations? Is space a category in this conflict between institution and counter-institution?
Yes.
Because I know you are interested in architecture especially.
Yes, of course, yes. Okay, this is also architectural story. Okay, you know, I don't want, when I hear something good, I don't want to repeat myself, and I'd like to be, you know, I'd like to improvise something, but it's very difficult, you know. This is idea of counter space. Well, how to produce counter space, because there is no counter institution. You know, this is trivial to have institution without the walls. For him, for Rabelais, this is the play of the words. He said, if we have walls, mur, in that case we have a murmure. This is gossips, you know, and this is beautiful. Also transparency. Transparency probably is an old idea. 100 years probably we have in architecture this invention of Benjamin mentioned, that guy, I forget the name, who wrote first the book about the glass, and then Colin Rowe about transparency, etc., etc. Transparency is not enough. Well, we have in postmodern, Gianni Vattimo wrote about democracy as a transparent strategy, transparent protocol. Yes, we have to invent something new, or follow some architects, or because architects are artists in one way or another, and they are producing some kind of ideas which can be useful for a new kind of community, new kind of exchange of documents, if you want, or exchange of enthusiasm. Because this idea, this space here, this is nothing, you know. In this space we have completely asymmetry, and you know, no democracy in this room. Well, that's it, huh? Or we have some kind of temporary intermezzo of anti-democracy now, yeah. But generally, how to build the space differently, well, this is huge enigma, and thank you for this, yeah.
Just a comment on that. We had a colleague here in September from Brazil working on this project exactly in this space in between. He was looking at the architecture of international organizations, starting with the League of Nations building in Geneva, at the UN in New York, at the African Union building, exactly sort of trying to understand how is international law institutionalized architecturally. You know, what happens in these buildings.
Beautiful subject.
Really interesting. I'll give you the contact. You might be interested to look at it. It was fascinating. I mean, completely new for me in that regard. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hello, thank you very much also for your insights. I'm a political scientist, and I have to say that I never heard the idea like democracy as transparency. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that, and can you repeat the name of the author who wrote about it, because I did not like
Gianni Vattimo.
Thank you so much. And can you elaborate a little bit more about the idea?
Do you have the same thing in Maria Zambrano? She said, on one way you have democracy and transparency, on the other way you have a sacrifice. Well, this is also beautiful. There is no sacrifice in democracy. The chance is, I think, the chance of this, because I mentioned today in one conversation about the war in this intervention in Gaza. I think that you have different strategy in this. Christian strategy and Israeli or Hebrew strategy in war is different. I'm not sure that this war. Israel will be stopped. I think very soon because of treatment of the life. I'm not sure that we will have this intervention, military intervention on the ground, because it will be huge atrocities on the part of the Israel, and the treatment of the life, importance of the life is different than in Russia's case. In Russia's case, through the history, in Christian, Orthodox Christian treatment of life, of sacrifice, is completely different. And this war will not stop anyway. Okay, never mind now. Transparency and this word sacrifice, provokes me to say something now about this. It's not maybe to improvise. I improvise something which is not good, maybe. Anyway, transparency. Well, it will be good to reinvent also this word, because you know very well, probably, that in Germany, after the Second War, we have all the buildings are generally in, and this is some kind of denazification in architecture, and to build something open. But you have, where is the problem? You have in fascistic building the same story. They are many windows, and probably fascistic architecture is most beautiful, because of it, because of windows, of different kind of windows, of transparency of, that means it's necessary to think again this this model, this mechanism, you know, because with psychoanalysis, we don't, you know, if I am transparent, it means I'm not transparent. If I say something, I'm not saying all, or I am not saying nothing, you know. That means transparency is difficult to understand today. Is not maybe important as such. Well.
Okay, well, there don't seem to be other hands raised for comments or questions. Petar, thank you very much for opening up this topic to us in all of its dimensions. Lots more to discuss, and I'm sure with your students and other colleagues you will be delving into this. So please join me in thanking Petar for his lecture, and thank you for your questions and for being here.